scare it away.
Come on, get me. Oh shit. Duck!
What should I do?
We are talking CHUPA from 2000, and this is directed by Tom Hooper, who also wrote this movie. CHUPA, of course, short for Chupacabra, and this is a very low budget shot on video movie that I would say is more inspired by the likes of X-Files and The Thing than it is actually like a Chupacabra kind of creature in the woods style movie. So the movie focuses on this kind of government task force that is made up through military, government personnel, a couple of civilians, and they have been brought together to try and find evidence and capture a Chupacabra. And this basically follows this kind of team of ragtag individuals as their attempts are, you know, trying to capture this thing. But there's also seemingly kind of elements of conspiracy, cover-ups, maybe some shenanigans going on, and a whole lot of paranoia. What will happen? You'll have to watch the movie and find out. So let's talk about it. Now, this is a very low budget movie, and it is definitely of its time. One of the kind of more charming things about it is looking at all the old tech. Even though this was a movie that came out in the year 2000, I don't know, part of it seems like older than that, to be honest. It kind of feels like this movie almost should have come out in like the early 90s to a degree, in regards to when you're looking at all the kind of the dot matrix printers and things like this, and floppy disks and stuff. It seems very, very kind of like a time capsule. Now, one thing that struck me that I maybe wasn't expecting with this movie is it's kind of so fairly decent characterization, I have to say. I mean, we have a kind of a wide breadth of different people, from, as I say, military types, government agencies, there's a professor, there's a psychic, a couple of younger people. So we get a real mix of characters here, and I've got to say that they're all taken to be somewhat serious. This isn't like a campy movie in any way. And I've got to say where we have depictions of people in a profession, say the military, or a government agent, or something like that, or a lecturer, professor, I have to say I thought they did a fair job of actually kind of giving us admittedly B-movie tinged character, but nonetheless a fairly sort of somewhat believable character to a degree. When you kind of look at it in the context of movies like this, I actually think this movie actually took its kind of characters somewhat seriously. And I would also say the acting isn't bad either. You know, I was kind of surprised. I'm not saying this is fantastic acting, and it's probably easy to poke holes at it because it's such a kind of low budget movie, but I think the cast did a fairly decent job here. I mean, it's clearly that it's not had many takes and stuff, but you know, I really don't have many issues with the acting here. When you're watching a kind of a silly low budget creature feature, I would say you'd be fairly impressed with if you had acting like this in any kind of movie that is of a similar kind of budget and subject matter. I actually thought the acting and the characterization here was fairly decent. And the movie actually focuses more on the kind of the paranoia a la The Thing, and the kind of like who's behind it and what's the conspiracy, more so than it is actually about a creature. So in those aspects, obviously, it's more just about people talking in rooms. And although that might not be the most exciting thing ever, you know, I think that's where the movie's probably best at, is having these sorts of fairly well drawn out characters and not bad performances in this kind of like X-Files sort of conspiracy style film. So, you know, it's more in depth than you think. As for the creature itself, I mean, there's some sort of You know, what is it? Is it an alien? Is it actually some type of cryptid? Is it something else? Is it just a government hoax? The movie kind of explores a few options. And do you know what? I mean, the creature doesn't look good. I think they've got someone who's kind of tall and skinny to kind of... It looks more like the Rake kind of style kind of creature, I have to say. And, you know, I guess for the very low budget movie that it is, I think it could have looked alright in a way. Just this kind of like white body stocking with a kind of a, you know, headpiece on and stuff. It's not brilliant, but I kind of get what they were going for, to be brutally honest. Let's talk about what doesn't work. I think the movie's a little longer than it needed to be. I think when you have a kind of these low budget B movies, they need to be quite punchy. This one, you know, it's not like it's a particularly long film. It's about an hour and I think 48 minutes. I didn't think it needed to be that long. I think you could have 20 minutes cut out of this and it'd be a bit more of a punchier film. The creature, I mean, like I said, it literally looks like a guy in a sort of body stocking, and that's all it is. And I think that the film could have been filmed in a way which gave the creature a little bit more threatening kind of look. I mean, it's like a white suit, and you know, it kind of sticks out, and I don't know. There were ways round it, I think, to kind of disguise the low budget nature of this, I think, than to what we actually got. But, you know, the creature we don't see on screen a whole lot. What we do have a whole lot, though, is conversations in rooms. And as much as I think this movie actually does a better job than it deserves, really, of having this kind of decent sort of characters and stuff, I mean, the movie, I think, is the pacing of it ends up being a bit sluggish. Because obviously the time that the movie takes, it's just a little bit too long. The real lack of actual sort of anything overtly horror on screen in regards, there's not a lot of the creature really. There's not much in regards to kind of kills and things like this. It is a lot of people discussing things in rooms and stuff like that. And, you know, ultimately becomes a little bit kind of too dull in areas, to be honest with you, and needed to have a little bit more kind of going on screen. I think the last act of the movie kind of dips its toe into more of a silly hokey element compared to the somewhat kind of played it pretty straight up until that point. And you know, the movie's not ashamed of its kind of influences, shall we say. You know, arguably you could say it could have had a little bit more of its own identity to a degree. You know, that's all I'll kind of say really on that so much. But you know, it's very sort of cheap looking at the end of the day. If you don't like B movies, this isn't going to convince you. It is cheap looking. It is hokey looking. They've probably done their best that they could on a budget like this. But at the end of the day, I think the movie... It's probably a little bit like rough around the edges for most people, and I think even there's maybe one or two too many characters perhaps, and some of the kind of the younger members of the cast maybe not quite as strong. I'm going to give it a 4 out of 10. It has a certain amount of charm, I'll say that. So if you have seen it, please let me know your thoughts, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.
Well, that was spooky. For more of that, subscribe to the Legion.